HackerHouse Security Solutions is a full-stack, bespoke cybersecurity services provider for high-risk SMB customers. vCISO, vSOC, penetration testing, compliance, 24/7 incident response.
Welcome everyone to the Hacker House Security Podcast. We're kind of changing up our format a little bit. So you're going to see some different faces, primarily mine and Nick's a lot. And we're bringing in special guests. I'm super excited. Our special guest today is one of my favorite compliance gurus. And we're going to talk about CMMC and some compliance stuff and some really cool stuff. But first, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ushi. I'm co-founder at Hacker House Security Solutions. We do security for small and medium-sized businesses in a variety of different industries. Primarily, we do some government type industries as well as precious metals and mining. And so my background is kind of eclectic. I was in law enforcement. I was a detective. I did online crimes. I did child abuse stuff. And then I just kind of organically ended up getting into cybersecurity. And here I am, so many years later, enjoying it. Before we get to our very special guest, I'm going to shoot it over to Nick to introduce himself.
Well, hello, I'm Nick. And I appreciate, Ushi, that you said organically, because I think that's how I fell into it as well.
Yeah, it just kind of works your way through however the universe sees fit.
I think it's a certain, and we've had this conversation before, and I don't need to go too far off track, but there's a certain meme type in your head, certain personality type that goes into cybersecurity and really excels, not just goes, oh, I want to make money, I want to do this. They usually don't last too long. Hate to say it, but that's kind of what happens to a lot of people because you get burned out. But then there's the people that want to solve those problems, that want to fix things, that want to see the little underlying magic that happens inside all the boxes and how they work. And that's kind of what pulled me into it, because I was an aviation mechanic. I'm still licensed. So if I want to go back to that, I can. I was in the Air Force for 20 years as a mechanic. And of course, all the extra special duty stuff. Anybody that's been in the military knows that. So you also become like forklift certified, or in my case, a customs agent and stuff like that. You do tons of other things. So I got to see a wide breadth of just lots of careers and how InfoSec actually weaves in and out, and security, especially for protection and physical security when I was an agent. And that was really fun too. But fell backwards into aircraft hacking, because once I started understanding how systems work, how networks work, how you could implant malicious logic and things, and see how you can overtake things and gain access you shouldn't have, unauthorized access. I started applying those rules into aviation, and I found a lot of flags. Gave a talk at DEF CON about that. If anybody wants to look it up, avionics primer for hackers. And going from there, went into data analytics. I was their policy person for a small data analytics firm. I love working for small firms because you get challenged by a lot of things you don't expect to do. So I ended up doing infrastructure deployments, and I was doing cybersecurity architecture, which I didn't know that's what it was called until I was talking to Steve about it. So I was doing that, and now I am an intern for Ushi. And it's so far so good, learning some more stuff.
Well, and we call you intern, but I hate that term just only because of how much information and knowledge that you have. But yes, you are one of our security engineers, and we're super excited to have you with us. But all right, well, thank you, Nick. And so now let's move on. So with us today is Erin Kelley. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm so flattered to be here, and I've learned so much from the both of you, and Eddie as well. When I started in security, I had started from a IT contracts management track where I was in school to be a paralegal. I ended up getting pulled into an insurance company that also does government contracts, TRICARE, Medicare administration. So learning about IT kind of through osmosis in that track, and moving over to security when there was an open management role that they were just like, oh, who's going to take over the access team, breaking off from the operations team. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So that's how I use my institutional knowledge there to really get into, and obviously the government contractor side of it was huge because I was summarizing audit findings before I knew, what they were really. And so kind of parlaying that into access team management, compliance, role-based access was huge. We are implementing and automating roles to help streamline up the process for a huge contract that we had just won. So it fit in perfectly. And it was really like, I realized that there's so much glory in getting stuff across the finish line and
Yeah.
really, making stuff happen. So I really like that aspect of it. And then there was a slight reorg. We had a couple of management shifts. So I got to be over the GRC team. That was kind of like a group that has not been previously a team of, security architecture, documentation coordination, audit coordination, security officers from the different lines of business for government. And so it was just a really good opportunity to get involved from that aspect, use my knowledge that I had already kind of built. I went for my CISSP, I went for a CISM cert, and then just, kind of in the whole aspect of GRC, it was like, yeah, there's a lot of glory in this too, getting stuff across the finish line. We were constantly being audited in that role. So after that, I moved into like the fintech almost space. So PCI was the bigger need there, and so picking up a little bit more on being on a smaller team, doing a lot more, but wearing hats of different roles and things like that. So where my current job is kind of in Nick's same space. It's the aviation space, but it's on the training side. So they do aviation simulation and training for corporate pilots. And there's a defense arm of that company. So being over CMMC preparation and readiness based on those NIST requirements, that was already something that was in my background, but this is a lot more specific, a lot more getting ready for a very specific type of assessment that can really, I'm just really excited to learn more about it. I've been studying to be a CCP, certified CMMC professional, and just from wherever I can, getting that that experience and perspective on the process, because it's a lot. It's stuff that we've been preparing for, obviously, but now that it's here, it's kind of like, all right, let's dive in as much as we can and make sure it gets across the finish line. So excited to be
Yeah.
here.
Awesome. It's funny, before we dive into like more technical stuff with CMMC, I had to laugh because I didn't know that you had studied to be a paralegal. And even though kind of our legal backgrounds are like totally different, like I found that all of my legal background, I was really into like I helped create warrant templates for searching like cell phone signals and other stuff like that, and so like I loved like legalese. I love like diving into a contract and reading through it, like. And
Yeah.
it was funny because before I got into compliance and GRC, you people in cybersecurity, there's people don't realize just how vast cybersecurity is and just how many areas there are. And I think like GRC and compliance in general kind of like is one of those things that I don't think is really like talked about a lot, or like, because I think it's like a lot of kind of it's a different personality than some of the other areas. And so I find that the people are a little quieter. They're not quite as like, let me tell you about my like GRC is just not, if you're a defender, if you're a blue team or you're a red team, you have stories for days. You have stories about this one time and things that happened, and like you have more war stories. I feel like in GRC there are some, but they're just, they're not quite as grand as some of the other areas can be. And but so I had heard that GRC was boring, and that it was like, like, oh, it's just really
It's
tedious,
and it's not technical.
and it's
Right.
not technical, which is like absolutely insane to me. So like, we've yeah, just the fact that people think it's not technical is insane, because there's so much technical knowledge that you need to have, especially like if you're creating environments. And like Nick was saying, like we've recently created a couple of security programs and environments for some clients recently, and there's so much that goes into that, and it's very technically deep. And if you want to be a good like assessor, a good analyst in terms of like readiness assessments, you really need to understand the deep technical ideas beyond just kind of that superficial what people think it is, because it really does go much deeper. So that's super cool. But so right now the big thing is, for those that aren't completely understanding CMMC, I have found that like there's so many misconceptions, misunderstandings, just vagueness that's out there about CMMC. And so recently, the government, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but like, so we had CMMC2 that was coming out. So for those who aren't aware, this is for like government contractors that are being held to the NIST 800-171 standards. And we'll get into which revision in a minute, because I think that's an interesting thing too. But so right now we're doing revision 2, and for CMMC level 1, that means you've done a self-assessment, and your company has a self-assessment on file.
Yeah.
So like everybody's kind of like, oh my gosh, what do we do if you're a government contractor, especially like our small business government contractors? I think sometimes people forget that, like, there are some really amazing small and medium-sized businesses that are doing government contracts out there. And in fact, if you're not one of those, but want to be one of those, the government actually allots certain percentage of contracts that are required to go to small and medium-sized businesses. And I think the thought there is both giving the smaller guys the opportunities, as well as trying to, they are supposed to not have quite as rigorous kind of requirements, so that small and medium-sized businesses don't get priced out because they can't afford, to make sure that they have certain regulations or whatever. But anyway, so right now these businesses are like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And so like one of the things I wanted for you to kind of bring up, we had talked about this a little bit yesterday, but kind of like, if you are a government contractor and you are like, oh my gosh, we have a handful of contracts right now, are we required? Like, how do they know that? What's the best advice that you would give somebody like that that's trying to
Gotcha.
figure this whole CMMC thing out for the first time?
Sounds good. DFARS clauses are how the CMMC requirements get applied.
And for
So
those who aren't familiar with DFARS stands for
Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations. And I think that's the defense version of FAR clauses, which are part of any federal acquisition. This is just
Okay.
more specific to defense.
Thank you.
But for those, it's there's been some talk of in the clauses before, it's been like you're required to be at the CMMC level required by the contract type of thing. But this November 10th is when contracting officers for the federal government are instructed to put it in every new bid and every renewal for option years or renewal contracts. So that is where that level will play in. They've been a part of previous solicitations, noticed in other solicitations before that date, but this is where this is the explicit, you need to put this in there if you're going to have controlled unclassified information in this contract. So controlled unclassified information is information that's either created by or on behalf of the government. And it's not at the level of classified, but it's at the level where it needs to be controlled. And that has a bunch of, implications for where you put it, where you're going to have your access governance be put on. And there's the 110 NIST controls that we're talking about. That is the core of what needs to be applied to that information. And so we could talk about that a little bit more, but that's where it starts, is in the contract. You're going to ask for clarification if there's, not a specific level, but there's been the indication through those clauses that CUI, controlling classified information, will be part of the deal. So that's where to start. It's not always clear, so it helps to have guidance and make sure that your legal and your other resources are involved with helping you interpret that. But that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and it shouldn't be too much like it's good for people to go through, make sure they're double checking their contracts, look for the DFARS clauses. If they're not there, the government isn't going to come into your contract. It has to be, you were saying to me, I think yesterday, that like we can expect that the only time that this is going to be is either a new bid for like a new solicitation, or if it's like a renegotiation of the current bid, right? So
Absolutely.
people don't need to be worried that like their current contract that does not say anything about having to have outside, maybe it's only saying CMMC level 1 right now. It's not changing. The contracts aren't evolving. They are where they are. And if you have a contract renegotiation come up, that's when that would happen. So nothing like, no surprises. What's in your contract is in your contract, and it's still in your contract unless there comes a time, either you're changing phases, a rebid, something, there's got to be some reworking of that contract to include that requirement.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I heard from the Cyber AB town hall, the most recent one in November, I believe, was it's not going to be just out of the blue, boom, contract mod. It's going to come up at those intervals or part of a solicitation where by the award date, you'll have to be at that level. So you might have to, in the bid, share, we've got this lined up, the certified third-party auditor, our assessor organization is the C3PAO, and that's the organization that is certified to certify you.
Right.
And it's basically the trusted authority that's going to tell the government directly that you are compliant. And that's been, you mentioned level 1, and thank you for doing that, because it's not all about CUI. It's also about level 1 is for federal contract information, and that is the contract information that the government has that's not open to the public. So there's specific info that, quantity wise or, bill of materials wise, it may be really specific to what the military is doing. So we don't want that out in the public space. And so there's a smaller subset of those NIST requirements that are going to be on deck for level 1 compliance. And that's the minimum for federal contractors going forward, I'm told, is they're going to have to be at least level 1 for those new solicitations.
Awesome. So, and then one of the things I wanted to come back to, so we were talking about like the revision, and you kind of giggled because like we've had this revision 3 out there for some time now, right? But it hasn't been kind of confirmed when we're to start using that. So currently the government is still saying we're on revision 2. We haven't moved to revision 3 yet, right? And so we just have to, that's not something to worry about right now for people. That's going to come out. We're expecting that sometime this year in 2026.
I think, we were relying on a DoD memo previously saying revision 3 is out. It's superseded revision 2, but for your NIST assessments, use revision 2. And so that, revision 3 has additional requirements. It's not, it's not necessarily an easy mapping for some of those to get to revision 3. So it's a good place to look into if you're just starting to put that together. But it's good that we can rely on revision 2, and it's been named in the CMMC, the current clauses, where that's going to be revision 2 for at least, I would say at least a year. Hopefully, it gets communicated well in advance of when that revision 3 will be used for those assessments, because it takes time. So I'm guessing, it's going to be hopefully not a very fast change to that.
Yeah. So for companies that might be considering putting in for government contracts and are kind of just like still in the planning phases or in the discovery phase of like, what is all of this going to take? What would your advice, or even just what would you share with those types of companies? Like if they're really looking into, what do I need to do to get CMMC compliant, starting from scratch, what kind of suggestions would you have for them?
Well, definitely your approach of the secure enclave is a huge, thing you can do. You set it up from the start to be separate and segmented. You set up secure controls, separate, everything, and you don't have to worry about, trying to retrofit your existing environment, or, dealing with a bunch of differently applied configurations, say, or different, certain organizations, it's going to be harder just to deal with that. But for organizations that are just getting into it, it's still a lot to apply to a secure cloud enclave. Document it all, make sure that it's set up appropriately, and there's clear responsibilities for that. But that's definitely a huge towards meeting some of those requirements out of the gate. The next thing I would do is make sure that the anticipated data flow of how you would fulfill that contract. You may get, things that you don't expect that would be cooey, but you can generally say, okay, for this contract, I'm going to receive data from this, and I'm going to, put it through my system this way, and have it come out or be sent out this way. So you can kind of start to map out the data flow of
And
how
I
that's
think
going to.
that's super like important too, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of people, especially like non-technical, people in an organization that know enough to understand, we have these cybersecurity requirements. I don't really understand what they are. And really what the government is doing is, this, when we're talking about CUI or classified, like any type of data that the government has determined is something that they want protected. It has some type of government secrets. Something in there is it's not public domain, right? It's not a public information. And so what the government is doing is saying, okay, well, we've got either data or an item that you are getting from us, and we might be sending it to you. And like, obviously we're doing cybersecurity, so ours is focused on that, kind of ephemeral data that is being sent to you that you're going to work on, and how you work on it. But like what the government wants to know, and why we like the secure enclave, is because the data that is protected is only staying in that area. You're not having to make sure that, because like one of the things is U.S. persons. So a U.S. person is somebody who either is a natural born citizen, or has their, do we still call it a green card? What is that? Is that
I'm not sure.
Whatever
like H-1B or?
No, like you're a
H-1B.
citizen, like your green card, like you can live here.
Okay.
It takes forever for people to get them. But yeah, so that is considered a U.S. person. So it doesn't have to be like somebody who is a citizen. It's somebody who has a green card is able to live and work here. But and has been through that crazy enormous process. Right, because it's right before like citizenship. Anyways, so those are U.S. person, and a foreign national. lots of organizations have them. It can be anybody that works for them that is not a green card holder. And so, unfortunately, those individuals are not able to be a part of government contracts. And so if you have an organization that's a large organization, you may have 50% foreign nationals working for you, or some other, that was an arbitrary percentage. But my point being, it could be a large number. And if you're trying to have government contracts, those people can't see that data. And beyond even just the employees, right? Like, it's about, where is this data? How is this data protected? I always like to compare cybersecurity to physical security, because we all know what it's like to secure our home or our apartment or wherever we live, or our car. We know about locking doors, and we know about that kind of stuff. And so when people think about, like, okay, so if somebody gave me something very, very special that is very secret, people can't see it, they're not allowed to see what I'm doing. And if it was, and the person who gave me that data, in this case, the government wants to know, okay, well, who can see my data? What doors do you have good locks on your doors? Are they to a certain standard? Are you just using zip ties, or are we using a really good, whatever lock? And so the same thing is to be said for what the government is trying to figure out here. And so these assessments are to show kind of like the environment that their secure data lives in. And any path that data takes from when it enters that environment, and so the enclave environment makes it so nice, because especially for small companies, because like, if you have, if you're using like Google Workspace, like we use Google Workspace, I don't know, is that good to tell people? Oh, well, and so
well,
like,
that's something that we had to do. And I wanted to bring this up earlier, because you're talking about compliance and having to step into the new compliances. The team I worked with was really, we actually did follow pretty good secure practices. So when it came to compliance, it just was a matter of annotating everything. So I had to spend a couple weeks going into Google's docs to see how secure their stuff is. It's certified under certain things, and using those certifications in our documentation. And I've always wanted to tell people that too, is if you are following pretty good cybersecurity, like just normal house cleaning that we all understand, then it's just a matter of documenting. And you're going to have to do a few stop gaps whenever you start stepping into this stuff. And at first it seems huge. Like, to me, it seemed impending. I was like, oh, we got to do all this stuff. And I was like, wait, we might be complying with it. I just need to document.
I would say that, but is compliance, compliance indicates that you are being compliant to something, right?
Mhm.
And like, depending on the industry, depending on what your compliance requirements are, or even if you have compliance requirements, some places don't have compliance requirements. So like, it's really important to understand what it is that you are complying to and why, right? And in the case of like CMMC and like, or NIST 800, like 171 specifically for CUI data, the government is wanting us to show, because I think like some people don't quite understand what it is that we are, number one, how we're protecting it, why we're protecting it, and why we have like those compliance requirements. And it's about showing the government that you are protecting their information, because that's a really big deal to our government, is that we're making sure that everything is getting protected. So awesome. Thank you for kind of like sharing through some of those things. Do you feel like there's anything currently, because we've had a lot of changes go on, do you feel like there's anything else that we haven't covered, or that you feel is important that companies should consider as they're moving through this new requirements?
Well, as someone who's tried to research a lot of different aspects of this, there's some good places to look, and then there's some less than trustworthy places of information where, you really have to kind of take in the info with a grain of salt to begin with, and then also make sure that it's really applying to your situation. There's a lot of Reddit, I've heard, is just filled with misinformation. So don't,
Really? That never
with
happens.
you're trying to kind of get some information from here and there. Really start with the authority, which there's the Cyber AB, which is the Cyber Accreditation Board for. They have a CMMC marketplace, so you can research the companies that you're wanting to give guidance or provide the certification. Then there's the government websites, which are just they're kind of hard to look through, with the clauses and the resources for CMMC. There was the CMMC Center of Awesomeness, which really helps with scoping and that other guidance that that really comes in handy. But yeah, you have to kind of bring it all in, try to make sense of your own environment and your own situation. Like I said, with where the data is flowing, then you can start to say, okay, what's appropriate for applying these requirements. Obviously, if you go too far, you're going more expensive, and so you want to make sure it's just right for what you need, and you have to make sure that the full controls and the control objectives are really met, because you can read a lot into those NIST controls and go in an entirely different.
Understanding them.
Yes.
Yeah, understanding what it is, because the controls are like one line, and
Mhm.
you should be explaining how you meet that control with much more than that. And yeah, understanding was definitely a hurdle when I first started doing compliance, like just understanding what are they looking for exactly here, and how do we show that?
And what I've heard, so this is stuff that it doesn't apply to my current role or anything, or my company, but with the way that it's audited, the way that this assessment happens, they're going to pick documentation, they're going to review evidence from your output of those processes. They're going to pick your all the staff. They're going to say, how does this work, and how were you trained to do this. They're going to ask them questions about, where can you find your standards and your policies, where how do you perform this, or show me that this is done. So it's a little bit more of a, you can kind of direct where the examples are coming from, and have those in advance, but you're really having to show a lot of things that previously were at the self-assessment level before, where it might be a less formal interview, or something that doesn't quite meet the muster. And so that was the government's entire reason for doing this. They wanted to make sure they understood for their entire supply chain, all down the line, have you met this level of muster? So that's the biggest thing, is just making sure that you're representing, and you're gathering everything for an actual third party to come in and say, "W- you know, what are you doing?" and
Yeah.
make sure that they understand it. So it's the same requirements. It's just maybe the burden of proof is a little bit more than you've had to go to before. Like just documenting where you haven't documented before. Like Nick said, it's all about taking down, like, here's what we currently do, and then you can run kind of a more of a gap analysis about, okay, is this going to meet every single control objective, or do we need more documentation, more technical changes for this one control? So yeah, it's taking that
And
approach. It's not.
thankfully, there are people like ourselves, everyone here, that
Yes.
are that can consult and come in, especially for for smaller orgs that might need some guidance getting. There's so many levels. I think sometimes people worry like you have to go all or nothing, and really there's phased approaches. You can bring somebody in just to get a little a little help, and so people don't have to worry too much. There is help available, right?
POAMs, they're a little bit different for CMMC. The scoring is the same, but there's different abilities. So the plan of action and milestones for only certain controls and only for up to 180 days. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're, preparing to make that switch. It's just a different way of looking at, any gaps in your compliance. So yeah, just wanted to get that in there last word.
Awesome. Thank you. Do you have anything that you're promoting right now? Anything
Me,
awesome
I'm
going on
doing
for you?
some very part-time consulting in that area, and hoping to get once I get my CCP, being able to learn a little bit more and get more involved with different aspects of it. I'm just really, I'm glad for the chance to talk about it. I think I said yesterday I could go on a rant about a lot of things around this, because there's just so much to be aware of, and it really helps to talk to more people and get as many resources that have that broader experience as you can.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I love any time that I get to hang out with you, and so getting to do it on a podcast, and your first podcast, I think that's so wonderful.
yeah,
But thank you so much for joining us. It was great to
thank you for
chat.
having me. Really good to
Nick, do
see you
you
guys.
have any parting words for the audience, or Erin?
Oh no, I had a great time. Thank you, because I'm new to a lot of the policy stuff. So I'm learning some stuff here too. So you just get to hear my interdiction of my little dumb traits, but pickups.
No, I
From
love it, because I think it's a great perspective for people to understand that, like, you don't have to know everything. There are people helping, right? Like, we're all working together and growing and learning, and that's I think it's good for people to see. And what's great about you, Nick, is that you're one of those people who like, I think we've all said, like, the ADHD is strong in us, and we deep dive into special interests, and we go, oh, this is cool, and deep dive into it. And it's one of my favorite things about Nick, actually, is just, you can be like, Nick, do you want to learn about this? And he's like, yes, I do. And then he comes back a week later with like a 2-hour like discussion on what he's learned. And it's really fun. And it's cool because, like, a lot of people aren't into GRC or into compliance. And so I love when other people find it cool as well. So
That's where it's at.
awesome.
Yeah.
No, I just need a reason. That's all it is. I won't do anything without a reason. So if I have a
Right.
reason, I'm like, okay, now I can learn this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to choose between a sensible budget and comprehensive security. We built our business on one principle: delivering high quality for an accessible price. Hacker House Security Solutions is a full-stack, bespoke cybersecurity services provider for high-risk SMB customers. vCISO, vSOC, penetration testing, compliance, 24/7 incident response. Security without compromise. Talk to Hacker House today.